Minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. The 2026 edition of Investing in African Mining Indaba has concluded in Cape Town, South Africa, underscoring Africa's central role in a renewed geopolitical race for critical minerals. Copper, lithium and other strategic resources are increasingly viewed as essential to global defense, to energy security, as well as artificial intelligence. Now, a key focus is the US-backed Lobito Corridor. It is a major infrastructure initiative that's aligned with the Trump administration's 2026 critical minerals agenda. Now, the project aims to diversify supply chains for copper as well as cobalt away from Chinese dominance. We've been speaking about that with Victor Homoswano just a moment ago on the very aggressive and seemingly successful nature that China is investing in Africa and the minerals industry. So this is dominated by linking mineral-rich Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia to Angola. That is the entire incentive behind the Lobito Corridor. So for more on this, we joined on the line by Abigail Hunter. Abigail is the Executive Director for the Center for Critical Minerals at Securing America's Future Energy, or SAFE. Good to have you with us, Abigail. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be joining you from the Munich Security Conference after flying here from Indaba from Cape Town yesterday.
My goodness, you really are the global jet setter, aren't you? But look, it's all about the business, and you're certainly on top of it. So let's step back a little bit, Abigail. You'll remember South Africa's G20 presidency. It emphasized securing critical mineral supply chains through beneficiation as well as fair trade. Now, at the 2026 Mining Indaba, did you see clear, coherent, critical mineral strategies from African governments when it comes to that G20 framework on critical minerals?
I definitely did. There was an incredible amount of optimism at this year's Indaba that I think shows the role that African nations can play in securing these supply chains. I think rightfully you talked about the Lobito Corridor. It isn't just about digging these things out of the ground, but making sure we have the infrastructure to physically move them that allows the security to a very diversified supply chains to the west, to the east, to northern countries, making sure that we're able to have the full visibility and ability to move the minerals around.
We are seeing a large number of companies or countries rather scrambling for the minerals on the African continent. But let's turn our focus now to the African countries themselves. From your perspective, how strategically important is mineral security for the African continent?
You know, it's an inverse of, I think, the challenges and the purview that we take in countries like where I'm based in the United States, where certainly we have minerals in our own subsoil, but the predominant leading driver in the conversation is the ability to access production of minerals today. Where African countries, producing countries, and countries that have increasing awareness over what's in their subsoil through geological mapping can play a role and can benefit is really the economic opportunity that the minerals-based economy through digitization, technological revolution, and electrification presents. So less of what we need and more of what we can gain in terms of the economic development promise that mineral development could ultimately bring to bear.
And talking about that economic development promise and the Lobito Corridor, which we were speaking about a little bit earlier on, how does the Lobito Corridor fit into broader U.S. efforts to secure critical minerals like cobalt and copper for energy transition?
The Lobito Corridor is a great example of U.S. investment that is actually foundational to developing supply chain security. It's really challenging to go in and discern critical mineral project competitiveness and economic value. But what the U.S. and its partners in the European Union, who are also supporting the Lobito Corridor, can do really well is ensure that there's a level playing field for the transportation of these goods. Obviously, the broader vision for the Lobito Corridor is to not only move mineral supply chains to the west, but also to make sure that agricultural tourism benefits come to the region as well. And so that's a really wonderful general economic promise to that development.
And let's look at the geopolitical competition, specifically over energy security. How does that and the fact that it is intensifying affect African mineral producers, and where are the main risks? Where would you identify the main risk areas to be?
So one of the greatest challenges preventing further development and value addition on the African continent, as we have seen in engaging with governments and businesses on the ground, continues to be energy access. You really need stable, reliable, and affordable sources of energy to support mine development, but also what many countries are trying to position themselves for, these refining, smelting, and further processing steps. For those, it really can't be overstated the importance of access to electricity and affordable, reliable electricity, again, at that.
And that brings me to something that I find quite interesting, the just energy transition, and how that is a key focus. And yet, if you look at, base load structure, a lot of that is on the traditional minerals and the traditional energy, production infrastructure. How does one balance the two?
Balancing the desires for just transition and energy development that can benefit broader citizens who lack electricity today is definitely a challenging endeavor. I think that as we diversify our energy supply chains, leveraging new technologies that are utilizing different types of minerals, you will start to see a broader benefiting group that are able to develop those supply chains. Lithium-ion batteries are a great example. You talked about at the beginning the need for not only lithium and cobalt, but also minerals like manganese and copper that can support the broader supply chain dynamics and leveraging lithium-ion batteries. There's a lot that can be done in the sub-Saharan region to benefit that, and hopefully that will bring some of the just transition promise if we're able to, again, meet on that promise of diversification.
And I'd like us to just maybe zone in on that quite a bit, because it's quite a critical, aspect of this. As you mentioned, the energy production as well as the sustainability and predictability of energy supply. You've mentioned the likes of lithium, cobalt, manganese in that just energy and global energy transition. How does SAFE assess the role of Africa in powering that global energy transition?
SAFE believes and predominantly supports securing critical mineral supply chains for our energy security, as well as our defense industrial base in the United States, alongside that of our allies. And ultimately, the way that we achieve supply chain security is through diversification, which I've emphasized many times in this interview. Diversification means that you have a much broader consortium of suppliers and buyers when it comes to minerals development. Right now, we're dealing collectively with a very strong geopolitical competitor in China that has both monopoly power with incredible investments and interests in mine development, both at home for them and internationally, and very much so on the African continent. They also have monopsony power, where they're actually the predominant buyer of many of these raw materials, because as we well know now, they dominate processing. Pick a mineral, the processing supply chain is 60% to 100% going through China for that transformational step.
So we've spoken about the economic aspects of this entire, sector. But what about the national security priorities? And let's focus on projects specifically like the Lobito Corridor. How should national security priorities be balanced with equitable economic development for countries such as the DRC, for Zambia and Angola?
I often try to treat national security questions in a more of a binary form, where we're trying to make sure that we are actually insulating our defense industrial base, defense systems, military systems from any shocks that could potentially undermine not only our military readiness, but also any civilian needs that would adversely affect GDP. So it's really more black and white when it comes to that. When it comes to the economic development and the economic security opportunities with mineral supply chains, everybody also has to contribute their share. The United States, Canada, Australia, South Africa, the DRC, everybody wants a piece of this ever-growing pie when it comes to minerals development. And they also all have resources that they can develop in their own subsoils. So it's a bit more of a balancing act when it comes to the economic opportunity. My understanding from the US government, from Washington, D.C., where I'm based as a nonprofit, is that prioritization is going towards production readiness, projects that can actually help with both this national security and economic security challenge in the short term, while also kind of weighing the economic comparative advantage that different projects can present, not only in Africa, but in other countries.
Abigail Hunter, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
And enjoy Munich. That's Abigail Hunter. She's the Executive Director of the Center for Critical Minerals at Securing America's Future Energy, that is SAFE. She takes us to exactly 4:30